What's going on, guys? Sam here with FinzTwinsTV, back with another video. And today we're going to be putting together our best of 2017 video. We had a super eventful year, caught a lot of big fish, and had some great memories made this year. I know it's a little late, a couple weeks late, but I had to get that Florida video out. You guys was super stoked to get that edited and posted. By the way, I hope you guys enjoyed that Florida video. We'll have another one posted next week, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe and stay tuned. Now, starting off at the very beginning of the year, this was in February, my PB spotted bass, just over 5 pounds, was dock fishing. This was springtime, so just after winter, those fish started to move into dock, starting to get into their spawning mode, and this fish was sitting right up on the edge of a dock. The sun wasn't real high, it was real cloudy, so these fish weren't up under the docks, but were sitting right out of them. I skipped my little shaky head up onto this dock, one of my very first times actually throwing a shaky head. I drug that thing out, and as soon as I made it up under that garage door on that dock, this giant spotted bass nailed it. One of my best memories of the year, and one I'll probably never forget. Over a 5-pound spotted bass in one of my first years of fishing out on Lake Lanier. So we're gonna move on to a number 2 of best events of 2017. Now, this one was on spring break. Every year my grandparents take us down to Dublin, Georgia, down in central Georgia, to do some bass fishing. We got a lot of ponds down there that we get permission to go in and fish, and this was one of them. We had a really good morning fishing out a pond that the year before I had caught my 10-pound bass, my PB bass for right now. So we are already off to a really good start. We go to this pond later in the afternoon, had never been there before, a fairly shallow pond, not real big, probably 2 acres, super clear, so I wasn't sure if there was going to be a lot of fish in here or not. You could see a lot of vegetation growing on the edges, and as soon as we got there, we could see a lot of bait swimming around, so that was our first good sign that this might be a good pond for us to catch some good bass. So to start off, I always like to throw just a little bitty jig. One of my favorite baits to throw. Just go into a pond and almost always catch fish. So I start throwing this little jig around. First cast, bam, 3-pounder. And this goes on and on and on. And we end up catching over 15 fish, over 3 pounds. About every single cast, we catch a fish. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. You could throw on a bank and you catch big fish. Throw out in the middle. This pond was just stacked with these giant fish, and this was by far one of my best days ever fishing, just cast after cast catching these giant largemouth bass. Now, next is mine and Jake's first appearance on a TV show. This one in particular was Fishing University. If y'all know what that is, it's a big fishing TV show that airs on the Sportsman and Outdoor channel. So we had the privilege to go up. Spro sent us up there, so we went up to Tennessee to fish Watts Bar and Melton Hill Lake. We didn't have the best fishing, we didn't catch a whole lot of fish, but we had an awesome time, a super great experience for us, and on our way back, we had some super good memories that we made trying some smallmouth fishing at Lake Norris in Tennessee. Like I said, end of June, real hot, bluebird skies, so definitely not ideal conditions for smallmouth fishing, especially since they're more cold water fish, and these temperatures were really rising up in this lake, so we really didn't expect a whole lot, but we wanted a chance to be able to catch our first smallmouth bass earlier this year. Now, we did some research before going out there, but there wasn't a whole lot about this lake. I guess it's not a super big fish lake, especially in that time of year. So like I said, when I go to somewhere, not sure what to throw, a jig is always my go-to bait. So we pull out the jig, and we fish for probably 4.5, 5 hours and don't get one single bite. So we just keep working and keep working. We fish banks, we fish humps, we fish points, and just aren't able to catch these fish that we're looking for. But we keep grinding through, and finally we're out on this big hump. Gets super shallow, probably 2 acres long. One of the biggest humps on this entire lake. I'm dragging that jig through, and finally I get that tap, set the hook. Only about 1.5 pound smallmouth bass, but my first smallmouth, so still a super big event. Now we keep fishing. We figured out that these fish might be just stacked up on these humps, so we gotta slow down, fish that jig super slow, and get those fish to bite, especially since the water temps were so high. Now about an hour goes by, starting to get dark, about 6 o'clock or so, and we're dragging these jigs down these humps, and bam, a 4-pound smallmouth bass. We didn't expect to catch anything this big. We're just going out there to see if we can catch a smallmouth bass and stick into this giant smallmouth bass. And these fish fight so hard. I didn't expect it. This 4-pound smallmouth probably fought as hard as an 8 or 9-pound largemouth bass. So these are super incredible fish, especially go out there and fight on a trip that we weren't even expecting to catch fish this big. Now it gotten dark, and before we researched a little bit and saw these people out there catching fish, night fishing like we would at Lanier, fishing that black and blue Spro crankbait around those rocky points. And so we went out there and tried that same thing. This time I think we were throwing that black and blue Spro. We also had a little bitty black Spro rock crawler that we were trying, and it just lit up. These fish really got going once it got dark, and we probably caught 7 or 8 more smallmouth bass out there fishing those rocky points and rocky humps with that little Spro crankbait. So an incredible time out there. My first time ever smallmouth fishing, and we hammer them. Now this next event was one that I'll surely never forget. My first time ever winning a bass fishing tournament. This was an FLW tournament. I believe we had 90 to 100 boats, so definitely we had a good bit of competition there. It was right on the verge between summer and fall, so it kind of started to get a little bit chilly, and it was raining all day long, pouring down rain, some miserable conditions, but we got out that 6-inch solid white and one that was bone, the Farley swim bait, and just started chunking those things out there on those offshore humps. And very first cast of the day, get a solid fish, a spotted bass, and just kept throwing that thing. Never put it down all day, just running up the lake, going hump to hump to hump, and just kept catching big old fish. I think we had one fish about 4.5 pounds, so for a spotted bass, it's super big. And I think we ended up having 16.5 pounds. So my personal best, all spot, 5-fish limit. So we were super stoked to have our first tournament win. Hopefully we can do the same this year and keep that streak going and keep winning some tournaments. Now the year before last, we had the state championship for the FLW High School Bass Fishing Series at Lake West Point, and we finished pretty well, right there in the top 10. So definitely not a bad day. But early fall, we decided to go back out there. Oh, and by the way, we've got our state championship this year again at West Point, February 10th. So coming up here real soon, we're going to be doing some pre-fishing this weekend, going down there in LaGrange to see if we can get on some good patterns, and we'll have that video posted before the next weekend we have the state championship out there. But early fall, we go out there, only second time ever fishing this lake. Earlier that year when we were out there, we just fished around Highland Marina, which was known to be a great spot to catch those big bass. They're at Lake West Point, but this time we decided, so we were going to learn some new tactics and go out there and try and figure out some different ways to catch fish. So we start off the morning throwing a solid black buzzbait with a gold blade on that thing, going back in the pockets, sun starting to rise, super pretty morning. Got the fog rising up off the lake, just throwing that buzzbait in the very back of those pockets, and these spotted bass back there in those pockets were killing our buzzbait. We spent about 30 minutes doing that, just like they would here at Lake Lanier. You get about 30 to 45 minutes of that early morning topwater bite, and it normally starts to shut down. So we switch over, grab our Spro rock crawlers, and go out to fish some humps and points. And as soon as we started to do that, we started to whack big old largemouth out there on Lake West Point. We actually switched it up a little bit and threw a square bill, which we've never done at Lanier. We didn't even know that would work. Out there on humps throwing a square bill, and I guess those fish were suspended so high up in that water column that you could even catch them on a square bill. So one of my favorite days of last year, doing some crankbait fishing, and hopefully we can replicate that and do good again next week at the state championship at Lake West Point. Now, like we talked about earlier in the video, I've got some ponds I like to fish down in central Georgia, and we went down there again right before Christmas. I think it was the 23rd or 24th of December, so my brother and I went down there, fished for a couple days, and came back right before Christmas. And we were invited down there by a buddy of mine named Rob Schumann, who is the lipless crankbait king. He loves fishing lipless crankbaits, always posting these pictures of giant fish on lipless crankbaits. So we decided we're gonna go down there and join him and see if we can catch on and see if we can catch some big fish down there on lipless crankbaits in central Georgia. Now this day in particular was one of the hottest days of December. Wasn't super cold at all. Had a good bit of wind blowing through there, and we decided, like he always does, grab the lipless crankbait and start making our rounds around the pond and start till we started to catch some good fish. So we started off, it was real slow. We didn't catch a lot of fish. In that first hour, the sun started to come up and the wind started howling. Jake got on a point and they started getting some really good fish, and we went over there and joined them, and everything kind of shut down right over there. And so we decided to go back. In the back of this little pocket, we had a spillway coming over where the dam was for the pond or lake just above it, and there was a deep hole right there on the other side of that spillway. First cast in there, we catch about a 7.5, 8-pound giant largemouth bass, which really helped out our 25-pound limit for that day. Now, like I was talking about just a minute ago about Jake catching those big fish right there on that point, he hangs into a giant, about a 6-pounder. They don't have a net over there, so he calls me across the lake, give me to go over there, put the trolling motor on 100 and book it over there. So I get that trolling motor and we run over there, and from our boat we net his fish and we jump over there on his boat, weigh this fish. So that was a crazy day. Both of us had over 20 pounds of fish. It was Jake and a buddy Wade and me and Rob, and we both had an awesome time out there fishing that day right before Christmas, catching some giant largemouth bass on a lipless crankbait. Now, I saved the best for last. About 2 weeks ago, we went down to Central Florida to do some largemouth bass fishing. Last year when we were down there, we were catching a bunch of really big fish, fishing some hyacinth mats and hydrilla, and just punching in those mats. And also we caught a lot of big fish, fishing on top water, buzzing frogs, and just regular popping frogs. Now this time we went down there, the water temp was about 10 degrees colder. A cold front had just came in, it was super windy, and they had shut these fish down. So the first day we were out there, it took us a while to adjust. We started off trying some stuff that had worked the previous years, but it just wasn't working. These fish were shut down, super cold water temps, and these fish are being super lethargic. So we switched and started to slow down, fishing a black and blue dirty jigs, finesse jig with just a little bitty rage crawl trailer on there, going super finesse, and just drug these things super slow along this levee where it dropped off in some deeper water we figured these fish would be. So we started off doing that for about an hour, got a fish or two, so we figured we'll work with it, keep trying it out. So at this point we figured we might have found us a nice pattern, so we kept going throughout the day, and we barely caught any small fish at all. Just big fish after big fish, and that first day we caught around 20 pounds of bass, which is really good, better than the year before we were catching them punching. So the next day we stuck with our plan, threw that jig the entire day, and man, did we have a surprise. So we get out there, one of the coldest days down there in Florida of all year, and it was slow like it was the day before, just starting off, but as that sun started to come up, those fish started to get active, and we started catching some giant fish. We had one about 8 pounds, we had one at 7, and we had a whole bunch of fish right there around 5 pounds. In my personal best 5 fish limit, 30-pound bag was an incredible day, and I caught more big fish in one day than I ever have previously. So there it is, my top 7 events of 2017, a year to remember in my best yet year of bass fishing. Hope you guys can stay along with us. Please subscribe to the channel to see what we have in store for 2018. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and stay tuned. We're gonna have an awesome next month fishing the state championship, and our next Florida video is coming out next week.